Welcome to the Awecast, where we dive deep into what makes you truly awesome. I'm your host, Athalie de Koning, founder of Awe Academy. In every episode, we explore the power of awe, not just as a feeling, but as a tool that transforms how we learn, grow, lead, live, and love. As each guest shares what sparks their curiosity and how they work with wonder, we connect with a deeper sense of awe. So, take a breath and get ready for some interpersonal magic. Welcome to the Awecast. Hello, Athalie.
Hello.
Welcome to the Awecast.
Thank you. Good morning to you. Good afternoon to me.
Good afternoon to you. Yes. I'm so happy to finally get to record our conversations. We have many conversations and have had many over the course of our entire lives because we're sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really proud when I say this. My heart just fills because I'm so happy that we have such a beautiful relationship. Apart from being my sister, you're also an amazing jazz singer, a composer, a vocal health educator, and the co-director of a mental health center in Thailand. So That is a whole lot. And you greatly inspire me, and I'd love to hear more about how awe plays a role in your life as well.
Thank you. You get to hear about it formally today.
Yes.
Even though informally, we talk about this quite a lot, all this
stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll just pretend that all of the answers are new. So okay. I am, in awe again and again.
Amazing.
Which I love anyway. So. You may see my cat's tail swishing across the screen at times, and I just let it happen because she is my true companion during all of these interviews. So.
I wish I had one of my dogs up here, but they don't come into the studio. So,
So we'll start with the question I usually begin with is, so what does awe mean to you, and how does it play out in your life?
Well, it's a small word for a big concept, I think. Yeah. What I like about the word awe is that as you've pointed out, awe is already in the word.
Yeah.
It's the feeling of like a spark or a momentary forgetting yourself, I think is part of it as well. When you're just absorbed in something without having to analyze whether it's right or wrong, whether it's good or bad, or what you're doing or what somebody else is doing. I think it's being fully present. That's how I would define awe. Being fully present and engaged.
Okay. And have you been in awe all of your life? Have you been able to be fully present in your entire life? Or has this grown over time? How's your journey of awe been?
Definitely not all the time and my whole life. I do think one of the strengths I have is that although I have a very strong awareness of all the heavy things in the world, I've also always had quite a strong connection to the child-like side of myself. And so I really I'm somebody who's very comfortable in gray. I'm not black and white. Yeah. So I would say that I often jump between, the seriousness of life and what they call adulting, I suppose, and also the ability to be caught up in a moment, like when I see a squirrel, or if I see a dewdrop on a leaf, or if I hear a chord that just moves me. So I think I'm quite good at sort of jumping back and forth, but it's definitely not a full-time state of being. Although I do think I've learned a lot more to observe where awe resides in me rather than, I think I connect to it more, maybe more in a more, how do I say this, in a more conscious way now than I used to. I think that's what it is. Yep. And make more space for it.
Yeah, I recognize that in your life as well. And do you think there was an event or was there a turning point where you feel this is when I opened up to the awareness of awe and I allowed for it more in my life?
Well, I actually, very coincidentally, I recently shared this on another podcast. Somehow I got several invitations at once, even though I've never been on a podcast before. But I did have it's an interesting thing. But I did have a very serious health incident, which is now 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago, where I mean, long story short, it was a medical incident where I ended up losing consciousness and hitting my head really hard a couple of times. And I had a concussion and whiplash. And so for many years, I had really extreme chronic pain all the time in my neck and my shoulders, and mainly the base of my skull. And so this, for me, confronted me with how I relate to my body. Because before that, I had always taken, I mean, I wouldn't even say I'd taken my body for granted. The way I was raised, or we were raised, is a bit like your body is just a vessel and it's temporary.
Yeah.
And this is a common theme in some religions, right? And so you just sort of get on with it. Your body carries you around, but you don't maybe embody it, or you don't, at least certainly I didn't really listen to my body. I did most things cognitively. I reasoned my way to things. I was very good at setting goals and following plans and being very high achieving. It really was my thing. And after this concussion, my brain was affected, my cognitive function was affected, and my body was affected with constant pain. So I'm not going to say, oh, I fell, and a year later, suddenly I realized,
awe
absolutely
struck you,
not.
and then you were healed. No, it's not a story like that.
It was years and years of first denying and trying to continue how I used to be, then slowly the reckoning and realizing, trying to find solutions, many different ones, of like trying to get rid of the pain. Then a point of accepting the pain and accepting the idea that maybe I would have to live with it forever, grieving that as well. And then finally having experiences where I started to listen to my body. And once I started listening to my body, I started relating to the pain differently, but also a whole world of connection opened up in me that was new, I would say, really new. A gentleness came that I had not had before towards myself, but also towards others.
So beautiful. Yeah, the gentleness, even the word just brings the drop of dew to mind, where it's so small and kind of unnoticeable, but it's so necessary for us to soften and to be aware of the mini wonders that actually make our cells live, make our cells alive. That's kind of what I feel like when you share this.
Absolutely. It's true.
And I know music does a lot for you, because you are a jazz singer and composer. So could you share a little bit about how jazz shaped your way of being? I think improvisation plays a really large role in how you do music. So let me hear about that.
Yeah. So originally, when I was in my teens, I started out with opera. I was in opera productions, helping to lead the children's choir. And I myself, I was not an opera singer, but I was like in these productions, singing, but I would say with an untrained voice, not fully realized voice. And then when it came to my studies, I looked into do I want to do classical music, or, and my parents, our parents encouraged me to do something more well-rounded. So they encouraged me to go into music education, which was a lot more broad. And I had already loved jazz. It was a kind of music that lit a flame within me. And I would say it was also the kind of music that it made me feel something in my body. I didn't know really what it was at the time, but I always just felt alive when I heard jazz music. And the
spark and the movement maybe as well.
The movement is something like a flame inside, and just something about it. There's jazz music about all kinds of topics, and a lot of it is like heartbreak and difficult things, and yet my great examples, I would say one of the top examples is Ella Fitzgerald. She sang with so much joy. And so in improvisation, the thing that always got me was this joy. No matter what you're going through, you can sing through it and acknowledge it through song. And so that's what I always felt with jazz. But anyway, I studied music education, which means many different instruments, many different types of music and styles. So I had a really well-rounded education, and I loved that. And soon after conservatory, I started teaching at a college, a music college. And as I was teaching there, I mean, I was almost the same age as my students because I did this fresh out of college. And after a while, I realized like I was kind of missing the real life experience. So I was teaching people about how to present and how to, sing and all this. And I had not had that much stage experience. Although, I mean, I would say I hadn't had that much specific improv jazz stage experience.
Right.
So
the lived jazz, you
exactly.
can do jazz or you can live it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I decided like I want to do that. And I think the thing that drew me towards jazz more than classical is exactly the improv element of it. I feel like when you are forced to accept mistakes instead of forcing yourself to fit into a specific aesthetic.
Yeah.
When you make a mistake in jazz, it's always, as cliche as it sounds, it's an opportunity for a new sound.
Yeah.
So if something happens, then you go, oh, what can I do with it? And you play around with it. Yeah. And that's what I love. It's play.
Yeah.
And so it helped my mind be a lot more flexible. It helped me to let go of certain, very specific ideas I had about performance.
Right.
And I think it absolutely sets us apart from cookie cutter music or AI productions. The real humanity in jazz music. It's always been the music of the people. Yeah. And I think it should always be that.
Yeah, I agree. And when I see you performing or actually setting the scene, you really include the audience. You have a beautiful way of engaging with the audience and making them a part of this playful dynamic. So you invite them into maybe to doing something they have never done, maybe taking a few dance steps or singing a little scat. Like it's scary to do something in gibberish that you've never done. And you just stand there and do it. And you set the example for people to go, oh, I could try.
Maybe I can do this. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I really love that about your performances.
And I often bring a whole bag of shakers. I bought a bunch of shakers. And just the childlike joy that I see in people when at the moment that I go, I've got these, do you want to try it? And I sort of play around. Sometimes they're really scared. And once they get it in their hand and they're like, oh, just something, moves in people. Yeah. And I love that. I just love that you can be a part of it. It doesn't have to be perfect, just as long as we share this experience together. Yeah.
Yeah. I really love that you have a really keen eye and ear for quality. You really want to deliver beautiful things to the world. So in your compositions, in the way you engage, the way you are a director, there's a lot of eye for detail. So there's a high need for quality. And at the same time, you also embrace mistakes and mistakes being opportunities for something new, for trying something different, for staying agile, I guess, in a way. Would you say that you, as a high achiever, you were a perfectionist and now you've kind of converted into something else? Could you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So I never thought I was a perfectionist. I would
never know this until they become unperfectionists.
Right. Yeah. I would never label myself as that. And just a few years ago, I had a conversation with one of our brothers where we were talking about music because he also composes, and he said, yeah, you're a perfectionist just like me. And I said, excuse me, no, I'm not. And then he was like, okay. And I said, yeah, I just want things to be a certain way, but that's not perfectionism. And so the moment it came out of my mouth, I realized that, okay, actually, I have very specific ideas about what's quality, and I can be extremely critical of myself, especially. So even if I give a lot of grace to others, I'm very critical of myself. And so realizing that, in a way, was the beginning of actually setting it free, because it made me see, what? Well, first of all, being seen by somebody and someone recognizing that in me and calling it out was really interesting, actually. And it kind of opened up this little window in my mind where I was always like, that label doesn't belong to me. And I think whenever doors are closed, when our perspective is closed to something, there's also little room for growth.
Yeah.
So when that little window was opened, it made me think, oh, okay, I started observing, not with judgment, but observing where in my life I'm holding myself back because I want it to be just right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, over time, I would say kind of since that conversation and also since being more connected to my body, I'm much more in a place where the discomfort or the imperfection, I will actually address it and invite it into the room. So if I've had a really bad day, there's always this idea of like the show must go on and, never let people see. But I've changed that narrative for myself. So if I'm on stage, I may say, hey guys, I got to be honest with you. I missed the bus on the way here. I got rained on and, but in this moment, let's be here, whatever kind of week you've had.
Yeah.
Let's share this moment and see if we can music our way through it. And I found I have so much more connection with people now that I'm not trying to be some perfect performer, because first of all, it doesn't exist. I mean, there are incredible performers out there who do everything, exactly right, which is amazing. And I applaud their skill and their discipline. I think that's really amazing. And at the same time, there's something to be said for being human and allowing stages to be spaces to be human as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I really like how you embrace. It's a form of vulnerability, because on stage we have to perform. We have to be our best selves, and we're told that you only deserve the stage if you have a certain status, or if if you're worthy of the stage. But really, what you do is you take away that whole pressure of being cooler than you really are and showing up as yourself. So
yeah,
I mean,
exactly. And I'm not that cool.
And we can't always be cool. We have to we have shit days just like anybody else, and it's beautiful to invite people into that space and say, and let's celebrate life anyway.
And a really big part of that is also, I was never someone who's, I would say, like born for the stage. It's genuinely not something I ever craved. I always loved, I was not afraid to be a leader. I wasn't afraid to kind of be doing things actively. That's not the part that I have discomfort with. But craving the spotlight, like I want the lights on me, I want people to see me, I just never had that genuinely. And so people in the beginning of my career, they would say really well-meaning things like, I hope you're going to be famous one day, and all this. And I've had a couple of times where I've had my 15 minutes of fame, and I've had an opportunity to expand that. But every time that happened, those opportunities came, I would really like withdraw. I would either go into full silent mode, or I would feel myself closing up. And I realized eventually what that was. It's because if I wanted to be famous, I would have to be a product.
Yeah.
And for me, so even like, there are even people out there who are, I'm so authentic. But if that becomes your brand,
yes, exactly,
then what does that do to your identity? And so I realized I really don't want to be a brand. It's just something that doesn't work for me personally.
Yeah.
And so, that's a really big part of this inviting imperfection, is that I just, from day to day, want to be able to have nuance. I want to be able to change if that's where I'm at. And when you're an established brand, there's not much room for that. So that's my personal opinion on that, my personal feeling on that.
I remember years ago, we had this conversation about fame and what it means, and success and what that means. And I hadn't started Awe Academy yet, and I was still figuring out how to integrate my love for art, my creativity, all the training I'd done around development, personal and professional development. And I was trying to integrate these things into a job, and a sort of like a perfect dream job type thing. And turns out that also doesn't exist. So I think what I love about your journey is you try to integrate what inspires you. So your love of jazz, your love of improvisation, your love for people, your love, the way you kind of see that being human is more important than being famous.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what I really like, and what I appreciated about our conversations over the years, is we talk about when it comes up, we talk about, well, what does that actually mean? And so what if we were to aspire to become famous, or what if we were to become monks in a in a monastery, or and we have these scenarios where we can really envision it and imagine it, and then we can sort of journey and come out with a new insight, or with a different insight, and somehow we integrate that into how we do work. So I was also wondering, with the vocal health educator and as a co-director of the mental health center, how has creativity guided you in those positions?
I would say, as a vocal health educator, I've always been really nerdy about understanding things. Like, the way I am is I tend to grow once I understand something.
Right.
And not everybody is the same way. Some people jump in and do it.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who likes to observe for a bit first, and then when I kind of can wrap my mind around it, then I do it.
Yeah.
So with vocal, like teaching people about vocal health, and also how their voice actually works. For me, this was a really great journey, because in all my own education growing up, I was often taught how a certain sound might feel. So they might say, like, imagine you're gazing at the stars, or something like that. And I would think, okay, but how does that really affect my voice? Yeah, I can imagine that, but I could also still be speaking in a monotone way while imagining it. Like,
wow, stars.
Yeah. And of course, like, I understand the prompts are supposed to evoke something, but not everybody has that connection immediately. And people react differently. I might go, wow, at the stars, and someone else might go, whoa. It's totally different vocal placement. So for me, I was like, well, how does it actually work? And no one could tell me. So it wasn't until years later that I discovered how vocal anatomy actually works, and how you can train your muscles very specifically to achieve certain sounds. And I found often when people would come to take vocal coaching with me, most of their experience had been imagery, but not really understanding how things work.
Right.
And so people tend to, push to the point of injury because of that kind of stuff, like misunderstandings. So if you're asking how creativity comes into it, I think when I listen to someone's voice, I can get a lot of data points of, like, their vocal habits and where, what things they might run into. And the creative part of it for me is helping them to find the voice that's really theirs, instead of an idea of what they're, like, emulating. And so helping them see that, hey, within your vocal folds that you're born with, this is how much stretch you can have. This is how much, you can manipulate this and that.
Yeah.
But it's your unique voice, and you're not going to be whatever famous singer you're trying to be.
Yeah.
Find your own voice and work within it. Because a lot of even really famous singers have, objectively speaking, well, it's always subjective, but they have funny sounding voices. There are a lot of famous people out there who have really funky, weird voices, but they made it work for them. And that's kind of what I help people to see in that work. Yeah. And then in the mental health side, I would say their creativity is really, again, it's mostly connected in meeting people where they're at. So finding out, hey, where are you at this point in life, and what might work for you as a resource. So at our mental health center, we have a lot of qualified therapists, but I will never say to someone, therapy, this is what you need. You need talk therapy. No, I believe that there are a variety of ways that people can get healing, and it's not all through the same thing. So we try to offer a variety of modalities, but if we don't have something and I see something else that might match that person really well, I love to connect them with that. So I would say I'm mostly a connector in that work, in all my work.
And you expand the field of mental health, I guess, remedy or possibility, because we need to nurture our mental health, because if we have a problem, we go to see a therapist, and we have one-on-ones quite often. And then there's a feeling that I own the problem, or I am the problem. And it's a very individualistic thing. Whereas I think, or my vision around this is that we are a collective, and we have systemic problems. We have problems that we may all go through in different stages of our lives. Not all the same, of course, but we can learn a lot from each other by being more connected with each other. So also what you've been setting up is these poetry nights and art exhibitions at the Mental Health Center. So people have a different language through which they can share their inner worlds with each other. And I think that's really a beautiful way to expand the possibilities of mental health nurturing, I would say, rather than only therapy and only talking and only the mental stuff.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned this about the collective or community. Is we were heavily involved in setting up a nonprofit for accreditation standards for counselors, right? And so what that means basically is counselor, the word counselor is not a protected title in many countries in the world. And so, anyone could say, I'm a counselor. But if they don't hold to certain standards and ethics, they could do a lot of harm, right? So we've set up this organization. But what's interesting is we were benchmarking all the standards across the world. And we found that a lot of the competency, described competencies, let's say in general, I'll say Europe, a lot of them were very individual based. And we found that they did not translate well to Thailand, which is a collectivist culture. And so we've already been having discussions about, hey, if we do competencies for Thailand or maybe broader Asia or Southeast Asia, what would that look like? Because we want to have the collective language as well, which is an integral part. Whereas a lot of traditional talk therapy, and there's been, there's so much development in recent years, which is wonderful. But a lot of traditional talk therapy is very individual focused. You have some like satire, that's very family oriented. So I love that there are many modalities out there, but it's definitely a discussion we're having too. I think the West is starting to realize how important collective units are, whereas in many Asian countries that has not been forgotten yet. So it's an interesting discussion.
And then also in collectivist cultures, you might have more of a community to deal with things like depression, for instance. On the other hand, in big cities, like a metropolitan city like Bangkok, you become very isolated and lonely, and work is mostly...
There's so much loneliness,
the driving force. So people don't have this time for connection so much anymore, and maybe have started looking for more individualistic ways to get help. Or to numb. I mean, we all know it's so easy to do gaming or drugs or alcohol, and you can numb your isolation and your feelings of loneliness and pain.
Or, like you said, numb, or therapy becomes just a way to manage instead of live. And we find that a lot when we work, with corporations where they will hire us, how can we do stress management? And I think, you have to look at the deeper underlying thing. If your whole life is just managing and not thriving, that may not be how you want to live.
I so agree with you there. That's, I think when you're managing, you're not living a life full of awe. And you can have moments of wow, but it can be so like it's a box opening and then closing again. So I feel like to have true expansion in our brains, in our bodies, and in our awareness, you need more than something management. You
Absolutely,
need,
yes.
So if you would have some advice for listeners and maybe team leads and people in organizations that are deliberately developmental, so they want to have their people continually learning, what advice would you give?
Oh, I mean, that's a really big question because it really depends on the organization. I tend to work with a lot more context. Like how does your organization normally do things? What's the company culture and all this? But I will say in general, if you ask me, how can you promote like creativity or creative growth in general? I always say there's like two main things. One is room for boredom. So if you're constantly busy with something, doing busy work or engaged or meeting your KPIs or whatever, if you're constantly in a state of trying to get something done, you're not going to have creative ideas for sure. And the other one is a sense of possibility. So and this is such a big conversation, because is there even enough space or psychological safety at a workplace for this?
Yeah.
But the idea is there must be places, spaces, or periods of time where anything is possible.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean, oh yeah, we'll give everybody $1 million, but there must be a space where you can express such an idea, revel in the feeling of it, and then afterwards go back and analyze, okay, how can we make part of this achievable? Or in the space of possibility, true change can happen and new things can emerge. And boredom is a huge one. Not enough people are bored, and especially now with all the distraction we have, our brains are constantly engaged with something, and that really does not bring creativity.
So in Dutch there's a word for it, and it's called lanterfanten.
Oh yes.
And I love the rhyme and rhythm of it, but I think it's more or less similar to dilly-dallying.
So dilly-dallying or faffing around.
Having time to just meander around and do whatever comes up and follow your inclinations. So suppose you wanted to pick up a leaf, you can. Or suppose you wanted to clean the house all of a sudden, not because you feel like you have to do this, but because you feel inclined to rearrange things, or put a light somewhere else, or whatever it could be. I feel these little things can clean up your inner space in a beautiful way, and create more room for inspiration, for awe, for creativity, and different problem solving skills. Like it even enhances your problem solving skills greatly.
And I think there have been, attempts to answer this. So, for example, intuitive eating. I think it touches on the same idea of actually listening to your body, and mindfulness is a similar idea. But as with many great ideas, they've then quickly been commercialized and become like a quick solution. Like, okay, we'll do an hour of mindfulness with our company and that will solve everything. Nope. You still haven't built enough space for the change to actually happen. So,
I feel like this with brainstorm, the concept of brainstorm, where you have a brainstorm and we have 10 minutes. Come on, brainstorm. Where I think brainstorm really needs the spaciousness, the imagineering, the possibility.
Incubation, right?
So some companies will have 10% of working time that people can dedicate to learning and to development. I think that's a good start. And on the other hand, I think that a true deliberately developmental organization is one where people really get to follow their inclinations alongside, of course, delivering the work that they need to do. But being given personal leeway to follow certain interests and passions.
I do think what's difficult is, especially now with hybrid work and remote work, in the past, you might be at an office and then you chat around the water cooler or in the coffee break room. And that's no longer here in many workplaces. And so it does become a lot more difficult, because how are you going to know that your employee, like for me as management, how am I going to know that they have a passion for something unless I plan in the time to talk to them about it? And if I have loads on my plate, am I the one that can be asking them about it? If they're also not in a place yet where they can even imagine it, because perhaps they've got lots of other things, or they just don't have that habit yet. How can they even get the ideas themselves? So it's a big it's a big concept. For sure.
And it's a big shift in culture as well, because it's very based on trust, and also there's a lot of in-between communication. And like you say, it's not at the water cooler anymore, so you have to be very intentional about these conversations and about establishing and nurturing this culture of development in your organization. But I think as a leader, as a person, you also have a great influence in how you do things and how you show up to work, and to boundaries, and to setting time aside for yourself, for your own creative nurturing.
That's absolutely true. And I do still want to give a side note as well, is that I want to make space for, there are plenty of people out there who do not crave newness, creativity. There are plenty of people who like to work in a routine and thrive in it. And that's okay too. you
Yeah.
know. And I think for me, as somebody who loves novelty and excitement and dynamism,
Yeah.
sometimes I expect everyone will have that. And so
Right.
if they have an hour to themselves, I expect their brains are going to, you know, make all these creative connections, but not everybody is that way.
Right.
And if somebody else has an hour to themselves, maybe they would just prefer to take a nap,
The nap,
or,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
which is also great, but, or they might, you know, they just might not have the same need for newness, or even the feeling of awe. Not everybody has the same desire for it. I think I had a good friend who said something to me about, you know, oh, people are always talking about, like, what's your dream in life? What's your ultimate, you know, goal, or what are you working towards? And she said, I don't really have it. I just live day by day. I do my job. I don't have huge ambitions, but I just like what I'm doing at work. And genuinely, that was it. And she said, is something wrong with me that I don't have more than that?
Yeah.
And I thought, actually, no, nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
If this is how you work, and this is how you thrive in your own context,
Yeah.
that's really okay too.
Yeah. So I think that's the important question to ask is are you feeling alive? Because I think there are also many people that feel like, I don't have a specific thing that makes me enjoy life the way it is. I just live life, and it's kind of a very flat thing. And I think we aren't meant to live like that, to be honest. I think we are meant to feel aliveness and movement in our ways of in our way of being. We have so much sensitivity in our bodies, so it's almost like a waste of beauty if that is not discovered and is left kind of under the blanket of a mundane, I guess, in the rut life. Let's put it like that. Mundane life can be very peaceful and nice. But yeah, so it's worth having conversations to people about this.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've come to a close.
Okay.
Thank you so much for this conversation. I enjoyed it very much.
Time just flew by.
Yes.
So yeah. Thank you. Thank
And it's a wrap. Thank you very much for listening to the Orecast today. My name is Dorchester Koning. I'm the founder of O Academy, a center for professional and personal development through training outdoors and with art. If you're interested to know more, look me up on oacademy.live.